Route 616, your home for all things Marvel main continuity. Hello everybody, this is RJ here, and we are back with episode 24. Yes, 24. Wow. Of Route 616. I'm here with Bill.
Hey.
And the bald-headed fuck Dan. And I only went there...
I see we're passing on the wit for insulting Dan this week, you bald-headed fuck.
I didn't have...
What the hell?
I didn't have anything funny this week, so I literally just...
So we're not going to talk about the Gobi Desert on top of Bill's head?
I used my Nottingham Forest line last week when you weren't here, so I had nothing for you.
It's like the fucking Makati, right? You know, it's just there's nothing.
You could have at least gone with bald-headed fucks.
Yeah. Inclusion there, bitch.
My insults are exclusively at Dan, so...
Wow.
What's the world coming to when I'm driven to defending Dan? He's wearing a fucking Liverpool jersey.
That's another straight.
That's my away jersey. So I have I have 4. 5. I have 5 Liverpool
That was
jerseys.
A badly designed away jersey, I gotta say. I did not like that
What?
one.
No, it's not my favorite by far, but hey, I'll wear it. I'm happy.
The Charlie Brown of the podcast, as Bill
Better
said
than the
before
fucking
we
tire
started.
tracks we had that year, though.
Oh my god, that was ugly.
Welcome to an earlier in the afternoon recording of Route 616. We are all energized and ready to go.
No, we're really not. We're just trying to get this over and done with so we can all have an afternoon nap.
Speak for yourself. I got my flu vaccine yesterday, and I feel like shit.
Ooh. Wow.
Nice.
Well, you look like you feel, Bill.
That was a good one.
Thank you.
I have to give credit where it's due. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So,
enough from the bald-headed fucks. Anyways, we have
our three nerdy white guys with glasses.
Inclusive, yeah. Okay.
Hold on.
3 generations of diff shit. Anyway, our lineup today includes...
Get a haircut, Ryan.
Yeah. X-Men number 3 is what we're going to open on, which is a big issue for X-Men. And then then we're going to go into Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos issue number 6. We have, after that, I believe it's Strange Tales 117 that we're coming in with. It sure is. We got an A story with the Torch, Human Torch, and a B story from Doctor Strange. And then we're going to go into Fantastic Four issue number 23, A Terrible Time, to be a trio. And then we have, for our main event, Amazing Spider-Man issue number 9. Certainly worthy of main event status. So...
No. It's really not.
With that being said, let us pull up X-Men issue number 3.
Oh god, I'm starting?
Yeah. I just ran through everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, whatever.
Okay, the site's a little broken right now, but that's okay. But here we go.
Okay.
X-Men number 3, Beware of the Blob, because that's right, this is the first appearance of classic X-Men film, The Blob. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, of course, and we have Paul Ryman on inks, and Saul Brodsky helping on inks for the cover. And then we have Artie Simic on letters. This is a November 1963 release. This is a 24-page story. Oh, that's even better. 2 extra pages, Dan. And off we go, Dan. Hey, the best part about this, behind the scenes, I was going to take this one originally, but Dan's like, oh, I'll take the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, you guys get all the crap stuff.
This is Dan's own fault. So.
Yeah, and this is my fault, and I'm already regretting it, because the summary for this really does look like it was written by Tolstoy. It's huge. So I'm going to try and go through it at a reasonably brisk pace if Wanker 1 and Wanker 2 will keep the trap shut.
I'm sure we won't.
Of course they won't. Oh, yeah, thanks, Bill. Oh, God. Why do I put myself through this? All right, so we start the story. The X-Men are seen training their powers in the mansion's gymnasium. The Beast is loading an ejector machine, which spits out large barrels filled with sawdust into the air. Cyclops is shooting them with his I-beams. Angel flies up and catches them, and Iceman freezes them. Professor X and Marvel Girl watch from the sidelines. Professor X states that Cyclops is doing very well and has increased his reaction time by 3% since last week. However, he also announces that he's upset about the fact that Scott is the most powerful one in the group, but he's also the most unhappy.
He's also I was going to say he's also the biggest downer. So that's where I had a note.
Well, nothing's changed in 50 years.
I know,
apparently.
that's what I had a note of.
I was going to make the same joke.
Yeah.
That's my first note. I was like, good to see Scott's always been a downer.
Yep. Scott replies he's stressed by his powers and says that even he wishes that sometimes we're not Cyclops. You're not the only one, Princess. Marvel Girl admonishes him for saying anything like that. In the background, Iceman splits the barrel open, the beast is spinning in the air. Sawdust goes everywhere, causing him to yell at Iceman for such a stunt, but also revealing that he abhors violence.
And now we are 2 panels into the story.
Wow.
I'm not even exaggerating. That's literally the splash page and 1 panel.
Dan, imagine reading this.
Oh, no, well, I am. Okay. Angel then spins a barrel at Iceman and knocks him over. Iceman retaliates by shooting snowballs at Angel and pins him to the wall. Cyclops then shoots the snowballs to thaw them out. Angel's let loose. Professor X steps in and commands the group to get back to training. Marvel Girl then takes her turn and tests her mental dexterity by telekinetically moving blocks quickly through the metal slots. Suddenly, Professor X tells them to stop and asks them to clear their minds of all thoughts. He has sensed another mutant and needs to hone in on his location. X scans the city streets with his mind's eye, looking for the mutant. Minutes later, he says he's found them and orders them into their street clothes to search for him. The men race to get ready.
Doesn't seem very found if they have to search.
Yeah. The men race to get ready as the first of them will do so will escort Jean Grey to the scene. Oh, wow. I can see where this is going.
Circus freak.
Yep. Scott is the slowest one, but he also thinks to himself that Jean is the girl he would most give his heart to. Aww. Boy, is he in for a surprise. However, the fear of his powers holds him back. Jean still tells the team that she would rather be escorted by Scott anyway. X thinks about Jean telling him not to worry for her, though he does. That makes no sense. He also thinks about his love for her and how improper it is for him.
Pause.
Being her leader and confined to the wheelchair.
So this is the Professor X's really creepy issue, because that is Professor X thinking to himself how much he loves Jean, who is a student.
Who is canonically 16 at this point.
And is a teenager.
Wow.
So this is the classic creepy Professor X moment that a lot of people always refer to.
Yeah, this is a classic Stan Lee pedophile theme that kind of creeps in every once in a while when nobody's paying attention or trying to keep him in line.
Yes.
Yeah, even they realized this was bad, and it's basically never mentioned again after this issue.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't think it's ever formally retconned out, and once in a while someone will stick some apologia in, but otherwise we can just pretend this never happened.
Yeah. Okay, so the team starts to leave, but then Warren swoops in and picks up Jean, whisking her away to his car, leaving the rest of the group literally in the dust. Ba-ba-boom. That's just horrible. They begin to search for the mutant, and Bobby finds who he thinks is them, burning paper from the air with his hand. Upon closer inspection, he finds the person to be holding a magnifying glass and stealthily burning paper with that. Next, Hank sees someone standing outside the 4th floor of a building in what looks like thin air. He climbs up the side of the building and finds a man standing on a transparent platform in order to put up lettering on the side of the building. Okay.
I forgot it. So what they're doing here is they split into groups.
Panels.
Yes, that they're mainly doing that, but they're just having fake outs because they split the team to search for this mutant because apparently his Professor X didn't do a good enough job finding him. So they split up into these groups and they're just having most of the team is having fake outs, and as we'll come to find out here, Jean and Scott are the ones that find the real mutant. So.
Thanks for giving it away there, Princess.
Well, I'm starting to think your synopsis could have used a little trimming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm only through the second paragraph. And there's about 20 of them.
You're still in single digits, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
That's all right. We're on page 6.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah, so anyway.
First panel, page 6.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's too bad they didn't have a leader who was like telekinetic and could pin down where the mutant is and tell them he's over there.
He's in the circus tent.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have accounted for the fact that Stan and Jack were told they had 4 extra pages to fill this issue.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to get this. We're going to be online for the next 6 hours if you don't let me get through this. Holy crap. It's crazy. Anyway. Scott is nearby at a carnival when X tells him telepathically that he's close to the mutant. Scott thinks maybe he could be the man at a Midway booth shooting targets without looking at them. Realizes it's a hoax and there's a man hiding in the booth shooting the targets. Scott blasts his gun and the man thinks that the carnival is haunted. Suddenly Barker states that the Blob is about to show and tells the people to step up and see all the feats he can perform. The professor says that the Blob is the mutant they're looking for and that they've finally found him. He couldn't just tell them to go to the fucking carnival. The Blob begins his show and the crowd is told to send up a dozen strong men to try and move him as he stands, arms outstretched on the stage. A group of men that include Scott step up and cannot move him even after 10 minutes. Next, a man shoots the Blob multiple times in the chest and stomach. Smoke clears and nothing happened to the Blob. The crowd thinks it's fake. Suddenly, the bullets appear from inside his massive skin as if it's finally regurgitating them back out. Later, Scott meets the Blob in his trailer where he's smoking a cigar. Scott tells him that he's there to bring the Blob to the X-Men's headquarters, that the X-Men don't take no for an answer. Wow, what an approach. That's brilliant. Okay.
The X-Men aren't really the good guys in half this issue.
No. It doesn't
This
seem
whole
like
issue there, the Blob is almost completely justified in how he acts.
Okay, so then Warren and Jean Grey enter and tell him they are requesting Blob join the team. The Blob agrees if he can sit next to Jean in the car, and he advances towards her, grabbing her arm. Warren tells him to back off.
The Blob is like 40, for the record.
Okay.
I haven't looked up what his actual age is, but by the way he's drawn, he's clearly a middle-aged man.
Yeah. Anyway, Warren tells him to back off, and Scott says he needs to learn a lesson and shoots him down with his eye beams. Jean steps in and calms down everyone's tempers, and the Blob says he will meet with them at their mansion. Once there, Professor X tests the Blob's strength and powers. He says as long as the Blob is in one spot, he's able to command his very skin. They test this by having him stand holding onto a chain while Iceman cranks it up to lift him. Instead, the chain pulls so hard that it breaks apart. All are impressed, and the Blob arrogantly agrees that he's the most powerful of them all. Iceman decides to show him a lesson and creates an ice block containing the Blob's foot. The Blob wiggles his toes and breaks the ice. Good God. The X-Men offer him full acceptance into the team, but the Blob refuses, thinking he is more powerful than all of them combined. He begins to walk out, and the team tries to stop him, as he knows their true identities. Professor X will need to clear Blob's memory of them all. So battle breaks out as the Blob grabs the Angel. Cyclops is too afraid to shoot, thinking he might harm his teammate. Well, yeah, that's clever. Blob then goes after the professor, but Marvel Girl moves her mentor telekinetically to safety and shuts the exit before the Blob can reach it. The Beast tries to stop him, but knocks himself out after hitting the Blob and crashing through the floor. The Blob is able to escape and retreats into a network of tunnels through a manhole. X warns that they must get the Blob to return so he can erase his memory. Meanwhile, the Blob returns to the circus. He believes that the only way for him to get rid of the X-Men is to attack them before they attack him. He goes to the circus owner and demands that he gather up the rest of the performers together. He states that he is mutants' homo superior and that he's taking over the circus. Okay.
This is the only unjustifiable thing the Blob does this entire issue is immediately declare himself superior to humans and try to take over the circus. Everything else he does, including attacking the X-Mansion, is completely justified by the way the X-Men acted and what we see they're planning when he's not there.
Yeah. Angel flies by to see what the Blob is up to. The mob shoots at Angel as he flies over the crowd. He dodges some bullets and returns to the mansion to inform the professor. Meanwhile, X has been building an electronic mass influencer, whatever the hell that is.
It's going to wipe the memory of all the circus performers instead of just the Blob, because now they're all going to know the X Mansion.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, how didn't you know that?
I have no memory of that. The Angel runs to everyone's room to get them ready for a fight with the circus gang. In Bobby's room, a giraffe suddenly sticks his head in the window and Bobby shoos him out. Then sees the gang already outside on the front lawn. Okay.
Get off
There
me.
is a great panel of Bobby forcing the giraffe's head back out of his window with a mop. I do like that.
Okay. The mob attacks the mansion and brings a battering ram to knock through the front door. God, this is straight out of a friggin' Universal horror film. Marvel Girl opens it up just before they reach it, and they all stumble in and fall in a big pile. Yeah, it's Mel Brooks' comic. And they storm through the mansion. They meet Cyclops down the hall, and he blasts them all right back out the door. Outside, a group of tightrope performers attach a rope to the top of the mansion and start to walk across. That's kind of funny. The Beast meets them and throws them back down. He spins down the pole they erected, and the Blob sends out a gorilla to attack him. There you go, Bill. We got gorillas.
Yep.
They're not
Every
flying.
comic's better with gorillas.
Yep, they're not flying monkeys, but they'll do. The Beast lifts a gorilla with his feet and spins him around as the Angel flies past. A wrangler tries to lasso the Angel, lasso the Angel, but misses. Then the flying Zambubas are shot out of a cannon and grab him out of the air, bringing Warren back to Earth. An elephant attacks Cyclops, who shoots it back to the ground. But the energy he uses drains him. Iceman and Jean are then surrounded. X admits that the team have the powers but lack the proper skills. He continues to work on the influencer as the battle goes on outside. A Blob thinks he's won when Cyclops regains his powers and blasts through the rope they tied him up with. He shoots the ground the Blob is standing on so that he can't get a good foothold. Clever. The Blob moves as some people throw a tight bag over Cyclops so he can't move his visor to shoot. The Beast finally defeats the gorilla he was fighting with and goes for the Blob. He jumps over a few people and dives through the human pyramid. He then hits the Blob but is taken down. The Blob ties up everyone in the group before leaving them outside while the circus moves to find Professor X. Whew. Okay, I'm getting a little winded. Last paragraph.
Yeah, you're 21 pages in, Dan. Keep it going.
God. Professor X sends out a thought to Marvel Girl to use her powers to remove the blindfold on her head and then find a tool around her to remove her bonds. Because she's too dumb to think of this herself, apparently.
Well, of course, she's a woman, and it's the 60s.
Yeah, okay. Somehow I think Gloria Steinem might get a little pissy about this. Luckily, the circus folk left their knife throwers caravan on the mansion lawn. Well, that's a coinky-dink. She gets a knife and brings it over to herself to cut through the ropes and free herself. She quickly frees the others as well. Inside, the mob has found Professor X and beaten him to death.
The end.
That's it. It's over. 3 issues of X-Men, and there is no more. Sorry. X is ready to use his
Stop making the story better, Dan.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. X is ready to use his weapon on them when an ice wall blocks the mob from reaching him. The X-Men appear and attack the group. Marvel Girl rounds them up, while Cyclops, Angel, Beast, and Iceman fight them all. Cyclops blasts the floor under the Blob, and he falls through. X quickly uses his weapon to erase all their memories, then uses his powers to suggest they forget about the X-Men and the mansion. Hopefully once they've left the mansion. The mob recovers and soon questions where they are and why they are there. Well, you're not at the X-Men mansion. It's okay. Don't worry. It's just a random mansion that you will never think about again once you leave. Now go away, peasants. They all go back to the circus so they are not fired. Professor X congratulates the X-Men and says he could not defeat the Blob without them. The Blob, well, couldn't defeat the Blob without Jean. The Blob, meanwhile, returns to circus life as if nothing happened. The professor worries that someday the Blob's memory may return.
So your powers suck.
So all of their memories might return?
No, only the Blob's, because he's extra powerful. The rest of them are only normal humans.
They claim the Blob's extra powerful, but the Blob doesn't really do anything in this issue.
Well, I have a note here that I want to read out loud, simply because it exists, and it will address some of what was being said. This is the now infamous issue in which Xavier thinks romantically of Jean, his student. Yes. Only being in a wheelchair keeps him from acting on his feelings. While startling to later readers, the panel was not controversial when published in '63 due to the culture of the time. It wasn't uncommon for women to marry upon graduating high school, or for students and teachers to engage in relations in the early '60s. Regardless, as Xavier's romantic love for Jean was not mentioned again, readers assumed that the panel was not canonical until X-Men Volume 2, number 53, revisited the moment as part of the Onslaught storyline.
Oh, great! The Onslaught storyline.
that nice. One.
I actually own the entire Onslaught arc.
It's a big X-Men story that happened in the '90s. It's
generally considered one of the worst storylines.
It's divisive. People, you either love it or hate it, pretty much.
Yeah, there is a bit of an issue though, because in the very previous issue, X removed the Vanisher's memories. In this issue, however, he must use precisely calibrated devices, possibly Cerebro, though it isn't named, to strengthen his abilities to the extent he can induce similar amnesia. Evidently, Lee and Kirby realized that X's use of his powers last issue made the whole X-Men team redundant, and therefore downgraded this ability. They're not wrong. It is pretty redundant if you can do that.
It takes them a while to get past Xavier just solving all their problems for them.
Yeah.
That's why there's the Charles Xavier syndrome, where he just gets killed or written off all the time after a while.
Well, we're now 23 minutes in, and we just finished the first title.
It's by far the longest we're going to have on any of them, though.
We'll probably go through some of them a lot quicker.
Yeah, I don't mind it, in spite of the creepy Xavier thing. It's not that bad an issue. It's different.
I've only read it the one time, and I thought this is the best X-Men issue by far so far.
That's the trick, is to only read it once. I, at this point, have read it 3 times because I actually own a reprint of this issue.
Oh.
In a trade, so I read it when I bought the trade. And then I read it when I did my initial read-through. And I've read it again this week for the recording. And I've liked the story less each time I've read it.
Yeah.
So it's the only one up to where I am in like 76 now that isn't getting rated on its first read through. It's my second, and I gave it a 3 then.
Okay.
It probably would have been close to a 4 the first time I read it.
Yeah.
And just rereading it this week, it would have been a 2 for me because, and I think a lot of it's just that this issue is super, super wordy.
Yeah.
And the action isn't fast enough to justify the amount of reading you have to do to get to where you're going.
Okay, for a comic book, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, of course, we're judging it by comic standards. If this was a novel, it would be very different.
Well, what I like about it is the fact that it's not 10 pages of filler with 1 page of action and conclusion.
Yeah.
You know, the story, there is an actual story there.
The pacing of the story is good. They just, and it's an editorial decision that if someone appears in a panel, they have to say something. And since this is a team, and it's something they run into with all the teams around this era, there's a lot of people in panels, so there's like 4 people saying the same thing in different ways.
Yeah, but again, I didn't mind this that much. As far as Marvel comics of this era, this one's not bad.
Yet the actual story's good.
Yeah, I mean,
I did end up
like
giving this one a 4.
Yeah. I really like, one thing I really like, and I hinted at it when we were talking about the issue, is that the X-Men are not the good guys.
Oh,
100%.
Sorry.
Other than taking over the carnival, every single thing the Blob does is entirely justifiable.
oh, absolutely. And I also don't have a problem with that, to be completely honest. I'll be the first to admit I'm not the biggest X-Men fan in the world, but I do like the X-Men better than, say, the Avengers, stuff like that. You know, they're very much a nice standalone unit. And it was kind of fun,
Yeah.
right?
I like the concept that they really don't know how to hero yet, so they just kind of come in, they're so self-righteous that they figure this guy's going to just instantly join up with them for the chance to save the world and be a hero. And the Blob's kind of an asshole, so the Blob has no interest in doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, three dumbass white guys who are really nerdy doing comic book blogs. You know, it's just they think they know what they're doing, but, you know, in the end... I'm just saying.
Are you saying I look like Fred Dukes?
Is that an insult?
Fred Dukes is the Blob.
Because, I mean, if it's an insult, then that's absolutely what I'm saying.
I mean, clearly you're not seeing straight. He doesn't have a beard.
Okay, that's fair, but we can draw one in. I got a pen.
Yeah.
Right.
On that subject, too, well, generally we've been somewhat critical about Paul Reinman's inking. I really like the way he inked the Blob's face in this.
He does do good in this issue.
Okay.
Also, if we need a different name to refer to the Blob by, I would like to suggest the Carney.
He is a carny. And then I have to point out the really bad thing that came out of this issue.
Which is?
This issue was successful enough that it led to the creation of the Carnival of Crime.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's a good thing.
No, it really isn't.
Oh, it's a brilliant thing. Because I just know you
hate that team.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, I think it's about time we move on to the second comic of this podcast.
Quickly.
As we're going to move into... Good thing this isn't another full story or anything. We have Certain Fury and his Howling Commandos, issue number 6. And the story is called The Fangs of the Desert Fox. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, of course. This is their baby. And we have George Russo's on inks and Artie Simek on letters. January 1964 release. Oh, and look at that. This one got an extra page as well, as it's 23 pages.
Do you like Subtle? Because we've got the story for you.
Oh, boy.
I don't really remember this story, so this should be fun.
It has a message.
Well, message is good.
I do like this story, but they are not subtle with their messaging.
Marvel Unlimited's being a pain in the ass today, so just one moment. There we go. Pretty decent cover. But anyways, The Fangs of the Desert Fox. We open up with a picture of, we get the team's faces on the side so we can see everybody, and of course we are only 6 Commandos these days, as Juniper died. I tried to make sure I said his last name right. And we see a Nazi here, then we get an explanation that this is Nazi Field Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox. Marshal Rommel, the Desert Fox. Rommel, the greatest of Hitler's generals. Rommel, the man who can't be stopped. And
Torquemada. Don't ask him for mercy. Torquemada. Don't... Sorry.
So we open up with one of the Howlers being tripped by some tripwire, and
it's Fury.
It's Fury, okay. And he is attacked
by He had
to
ride a bike to go on a date with Pamela because the Jeep he was in broke.
Pamela Hawthorne. But Fury fights back, including a great panel where he throws a fucking bike at a Nazi. And the Nazis are taken care of. And they take them back as prisoners here, it looks like, so that's great. So we're then shown Fury is then back at camp and is with Pamela Hawthorne. Or Holly, her name is. The names in this title, I keep mixing them up, I can't. But anyways, they're sitting around as they're watching... Rommel's Desert Army and their the new footage they've put out there for propaganda. And one of them's like, oh, it's Pamela. Pamela's like, but Rommel isn't invincible, Nicholas. Sooner or later, chaps will find a way to take care of him. And Fury's like, there ain't nothing gonna stop the Desert Fox, blah, blah, blah. Look at the scene, I got a Nazi cameraman. And look at this guy's face, he's got such confidence, blah, blah, blah. So, we then move into our forces, the United States forces here. They're having a little meeting. I'm guessing Happy Sam Sawyer is probably in here. And they're talking to like, Rommel must be stopped. But we cannot muster the men or the weapons to do it in time. I think they're talking about him having to be... I don't know if they're talking about him having to be stopped before a certain event, or if they're just in general here, but... one of them is like, if we cannot beat him by forces of arms, there is only one other answer. He must be defeated by stealth. So... that's where the Commandos come in, as Happy Sam Sawyer gives Nicholas Fury his next mission. Him and the Commandos are sent to stealthily take down Rommel. So, we get a brief recap of who the the Commandos are again. At issue 6, in case you didn't know. Fair enough, there might be new readers. It's the 60s. Some fun character moments, and as they all parachute into the location of the next mission.
No, they're not parachuting into the mission yet. They're on a training mission.
Yes, they're just practicing. Look at that.
If this was into their actual mission, we wouldn't be able to shoehorn a message into this issue.
Wow.
But we go to the next day in the infirmary.
It just plows right on.
And we go to the next day in the infirmary.
Next day.
Did you miss a bit there, Ryan? Why are we in the infirmary?
Well, during the training mission, Dino gets hurt because his parachute pulls out lately, so he ends up going into a tree. And that leads us to the next day in the infirmary, where we learn that, well, Dino's leg's fucked up, so he can't actually go on this next mission to take down the Desert Fox. So with that in mind...
Wow.
With that in mind, Dino is going to have a replacement for this issue. A replacement to fill out the ranks of the Howling Commandos. We didn't need one after Junior died, but we're going to get one now. And we meet Stonewall. George Stonewall. There's his first name. Had to look for a minute. We meet George Stonewall. He's been coming up... He's been coming up the ranks a bit, and he's getting his chance here as Dino Manelli is out of action.
Want to guess his major personality trait, Dan?
He's a singer?
It's racism.
Ooh.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I'll admit, I thought that they were even heavier-handed with the messaging because I was misreading the name as Stonewall for the entire time instead of Stonewell.
Oh, dear.
I'm like, oh, Jesus, they literally named him after a Confederate general.
Yeah.
So,
what if he's from Jacksonville?
They,
just asking.
Yeah. So they prepare for the mission, and I believe it's Fury that's like, oh, it's a good thing you were available, Stonewall. We really need somebody for this. Is a big mission. He's like,
the reason they needed a replacement was Dino was the only one who could speak German.
Yes. But that's not important. No. But we have Fury that's
German.
Fury says he's like, oh, I'm going to introduce you to the rest of the team now. And he gets along great with the Commandos, and he meets all of them.
Well, he gets along great with one of them.
Yeah, I guess so. He's kind of a dick. Well,
he had issues with Dino and Gabe.
He has issues with Izzy too. He gets
because Izzy's a Jew.
Yeah, he gets along with. I'm
not joking, Dan. That's literally the reason he doesn't like Izzy. Like I said, they have a message with this issue.
He gets along with Dum Dum.
I believe you. I just
He gets along with Dum Dum, and he gets along with the blonde guy that I don't remember his name.
Reb.
And Reb,
because
thank
he's
you.
Southern.
Yes. But then,
wow.
When he learns that there is a black man amongst their midst, he starts freaking out. He's like, "What are you doing in that bed?" and all this stuff. So we have a racist in the midst. I don't even. Did he even get an interaction with Izzy here? I think his interaction.
Yeah, he tells off
Izzy's
Izzy too.
Oh, he tells off Izzy at the start. That's why I missed it. He's the first one he meets, and this doesn't like. But then we move on, and they are on the battlefields. We see their stealth mission has commenced. They take down a tank pretty greatly, and then there's just a lot going on. Oh, they go to take down a Nazi general or something that's here, and it's Stonewall and Gabe, and Gabe goes
Ryan,
to take care of it.
Can I ask you a question? Did you read this before we started casting? I'm just curious.
Gabe, I haven't read this in a while. Gabe goes to take care of the Nazi, and the new guy Stonewall is like, no, it stops him. Stonewall just keeps stopping the people he doesn't like from actually doing stuff they're trying to do and everything.
He won't trust them to actually do it right, so he has to do it himself.
Yes, because the white man has to do everything to get it done right. And
every time he stops one of them and does it himself, he fucks it up.
Yeah, it almost gets them blown to smithereens by one of those shaker grenades, whatever they're called. But after the explosion, Gabe ends up saving Stonewall's life, to which he still throws a fit about because he's getting saved by a black man. And they go back to recuperate a little bit, and Fury gets mad because of the fighting. And they're all grouped together, but they did manage to get a prisoner here. And Stonewall's trying to play nice with the prisoner and be like, hey, nobody's going to hurt you here. Just, we need some information, blah, blah, blah. So the guy does... Oh, the guy's like, oh, I heard you talking with the others. You're not like them. You were different. It is our side you should be fighting on, the side of the superior Aryans. For we do not allow inferior races to mingle with us. So he's playing into the racist hand. But Stonewall's like, I'm not one of you. He's like, you're barking up the wrong tree. I have no use for Nazis either. And as he's going into his spiel, the Nazis prepare an attack that is noticed by the Commandos. Their prisoner... the prisoner attacks Stonewall, who turned his back and starts to run out, but is shot down by his own men, because the Nazis are dumbasses. So the Commandos get into their little buggy and start driving off. Somehow the plane is missing them, like this is an action movie. So they find some cover right as there is an explosion right next to their buggy and destroys their buggy some. Fury is injured a little bit in the explosion, but overall the group is alright. They make their way and find some transportation through some camels that are in a nearby village or something here. And the villagers are friendly. They feed the Commandos, and all seems to be going all right. And the Commandos make their way back to continue their assault. But they are overwhelmed when they see a fucking massive army awaiting, as this is one of their bases. This is all this might is under the command of the one man named Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox.
Erwin Rommel.
Rommel.
Release Wadger.
So I don't know what's happening here. They have a plan, and they're gonna send in. Fury wants to send in Izzy to pass the guards to get to Rommel somehow. And Stonewall starts putting up a fight. He's like, why Izzy? And so Fury's had enough. Fury's had enough, and he's like, look, you prejudiced, bigoted crumb. If you're refusing to obey a direct order in the field, I'll have your hide. So he's like, okay, I'll listen, but don't blame me, he gums it up. And then one of the others speaks up and is like, and calls him a creep and everything. So they get the plan underway. Stonewall helps Izzy get to where he needs to be, but it doesn't go successfully because Izzy starts saying how Stonewall needs to follow orders because he starts going off mission a bit, and then Stonewall's a dumbass and sabotages the mission by pushing Izzy into some barrels and stuff. So the Nazis are now alerted and has left them fighting with their life. So now Izzy and the racist Stonewall are back to back, protecting themselves. They keep fighting, and Stonewall gets knocked out by an explosion. So Izzy saves his life. So if you keep track the second time, the racist has been saved by people he doesn't like. And they managed to get into a Nazi vehicle which the Commandos had taken over. So they're safe for now. And they get back to an Allied hospital tent where Stonewall can be attended to, and then Gabe also gets, it is learned that Stonewall needs a blood transfusion, but there's coincidentally only one person that can give him the blood transfusion, and it is Gabe, and Gabe does step up to save this racist life, but Stonewall isn't exactly happy about that, because he starts freaking out when he wakes up, and he's like, no, not your blood, and all this stuff. So Fury meets up with some other generals in the medical field unit. Is like talks about how they failed in the mission, but they could try again. But they are stopped, and they're like, it is too much for us to take on right now. And we are pretty much left off with us pondering that this issue was just to give us the message that racism is bad. I don't know if I missed anything in that last page I gave up on Shine. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, the reason they were told to back off on killing Rommel is because of the assassination plot on Hitler. That is widely believed to have been the idea of Rommel. So if they killed Rommel, no one was going to assassinate Hitler. And I mean, ultimately, we all know how that actually happened with someone tossing a bomb through a time photograph, but, you know, we can't all be that lucky.
Well, Falkenheim?
It was a Red Dwarf reference, Dan.
Yeah,
I think
immediately went to Valkyrie.
Dan tapped out on.
Dan just stopped listening halfway through.
That was just interminable. That was just, it took forever.
The big problem with this issue is it should have been 2 issues. They should have done an issue in North Africa about going after Rommel, and they should have done an issue about dealing with the racist on the team.
Yeah.
Shoving them both into the same issue made neither one of them that good.
Well, it was technically a subplot, but it kind of dominated the story, unfortunately.
The subplot became the main plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the stuff about Rommel was just kind of relegated to irrelevance, because it could have been anywhere that they were having those issues with Stonewall.
They just wrapped up the main conflict real fast, too, at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This was one of my least favorite Sergeant Fury issues because of that. It was still fine.
This was one of my
favorite. I gave it 3 stars, but neither of the plots that were involved, I felt, got the time they deserved, because they had to take away all subtlety from the Stonewall plot and just have him be like the dumbest, most overtly racist person in history, because they didn't have enough pages to build up to it. So he just had to, in the middle of an armed camp, get into a shouting match with a guy that he considered his inferior, because it was the only way they could get that point across in half as many pages that they had. And, you know, going after one of the most famous generals of World War II was relegated to subplot status because they had this other stuff they had to do. So both stories just ended up not really satisfying.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
agree.
just tedious.
It could have been tackled better for sure, but this is one of my favorite issues so far. I just liked the Desert Fox stuff. Who cares? I did like the racism story, even if it was ham-fisted. I thought it was important for the time. Nobody else was really.
Oh yeah, this was
doing it at the
before
moment.
the Civil Rights Act that they wrote this.
So I thought this was pretty important.
This was a
still.
year before the Civil Rights Act, so it's really cool that they did that story. It's just the way they did it was so bad.
I can agree with that. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of them tackling it, though. So I gave this one a 4. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's not terrible, and I mean, it's not like it doesn't need to be said out loud, right?
Yeah.
And even today, it needs to be said out loud.
Probably more today than 5 years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think part of it for me, too, was I was really excited to see them go after Rommel. Like, I saw that teased last issue.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to be really cool, and so for that to be relegated to subplot, I was kind of salty about that to begin with.
Fair enough.
Because hunting a tank army in North Africa is like a unit of 6 commandos is actually a really interesting concept.
Yeah, they could give them jeeps and everything, call them like the long range detail, maybe even call them the Desert Rats. And make a TV show called The Rat Patrol. Oh my God, we got no, sorry, it's been done.
Did you give your rating, Bill?
I said 3 stars, but I don't know if you caught that.
I didn't. Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
But either of those stories on their own for me would have probably been a 4-star. Putting it together just knocked a star off.
Fair enough. Anyways, I think it's about time we moved on to our favorites.
Big
It is
time.
Strange Tales, and it is the Human Torch. As we go to Strange Tales number 117, the A story, as we witness the return of the eel. And this is Stan Lee and Dick Ayers is doing art in this issue. And we have Jack Kirby doing the cover. And letters are done by Artie Simic, and it should be a little more brief because this is only a 14-page story, which is still an extra page than he normally gets. So everybody gets
Everyone's
extra
getting
pages.
inflated stories this month.
Yeah. All right, Bill, that's for you.
I was just going to stay quiet and hope you forgot that part. All right, so this story opens with Johnny hearing that the eel... And here we get some really, really bad Stan writing right off the start.
Ooh, just what we were looking
Because
forward
we
to.
get a news article announcing that the eel is out of jail and, quote, at large again.
Slippery little cuss.
And so Johnny decides that he's going to do his civic duty and get him wrapped up and back in jail. So he flames on, heads out, and finds the eel walking down the street. He traps him in a ring of fire and brings him back to the jail, where the warden's like, "What the fuck are you doing? We released him for good behavior."
But he was down, in
So-
a ring of fire.
Let's just go into that for a second. He was released on good behavior, but the news said he was at large. So this
That's
actually,
why I said it was bad Stan writing, because Stan clearly wanted to put in your mind that he escaped. And therefore phrased it the way no one would ever actually phrase it.
So this is not on Johnny for once.
No, Stan wanted to do the story where Johnny fucked up, but he wrote it poorly, and so Johnny in fact did not fuck up. But anyway, the eel just hops into a car and is like, "Later, losers," and leaves. And
I would too.
yeah, and Johnny goes back to the Fantastic Four and sulks about how he was made to look like an idiot. And Eel goes back to his job as a security guard at the aquarium while he plots his next move. And he discusses how he put electric eel powers into his eel costume. To some electric eels.
I'm just watching Dan's face slowly twist and turn.
Don't worry, Dan, I'm already 6 pages into this.
Oh, thank God.
I can skim.
Thank you.
And so Johnny's patrolling the city looking for the eel, but the eel is using the sewer to get around. And he realizes that Johnny's probably keeping an eye on banks and jewelry stores. So he breaks into a stamp collector's house and steals the stamp collection.
That got a pop from Dan.
It would have worked better if I was joking.
That's the problem. I know you're probably serious.
No, I am serious. And it's very valuable because it gets reported in the paper, and the whole Fantastic Four is concerned, but Johnny says he'll handle it. And so the eel is reading the paper at the aquarium, and he sees a report that Prince Singram of Turkestan is in New York with his ruby, the largest and most valuable in the world. So he immediately runs off the job and turns into the eel and breaks into this guy's penthouse apartment to steal the ruby. And he grabs it, and it catches on fire. Because, oh look, the whole thing was a trap set by the Human Torch. And he just got them to run the story in the paper himself. And so the eel just jumps out the window and gets into his eelcopter and flies away. And Johnny starts chasing him, but it has a water gun. And so he shoots at Johnny with the water gun, but Johnny dodges it right into a cloud of laughing gas. And the eel takes off as Johnny laughs at him fleeing. And Johnny goes back home and gets into a big rage about how the eel put one over on him again. And Susan has to point out to him
that he's a dickhead.
But also that every single one of their villains has a themed hideout. And so he figures out that, he must be at the aquarium. And he flies over to the aquarium and starts looking around. And the eel in a civilian guise sees him and runs off. Well, Johnny is just staring mesmerized at the electric eels, and he keeps staring so long that he doesn't notice that the place closed, and all the doors were locked. And the eel jumps out of the showers and attacks him, and tries to electrocute him. And Johnny tries to flame on to get away, but the eel has coated himself in asbestos oil, and so he won't actually be able to flame on. But he can still make himself hot enough that the eel lets go of his grip. And they fight for a bunch, and he ends up knocking out Johnny and drags him out back to go throw him in the shark tank. But Johnny wakes up, and during the fight, all the eel's grease has been rubbed off, so Johnny's able to flame on, and the eel starts chasing him. But Johnny tricks the eel into electrocuting himself because he can burn so hot that he reflects the electricity back on the eel. And then he melts through the barrel of asbestos grease so that it spills all over the floor. And when the eel comes running at Johnny, he slips on the grease and falls into the electric eel tank and gets trapped in there until the police come to arrest him. And Johnny goes back home and thinks about how he never wants to see another fish, just in time for the rest of the Fantastic Four to show up and gift him a brand new aquarium. The end.
Yeah. Okay.
Human Torch Strange Tales has slowly been becoming the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is, isn't it?
See, this is why I don't consider it as bad as Giant Man. At least it's funny.
It's not as...
It's not deliberately funny, but it's funny.
When it was Ant-Man was slightly better of a title than Giant Man has been in terms of consistency. Giant Man is fully the worst title, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, 2 stars because at least the art was good.
I gave this 3 because I love the eel.
You know, I can't even argue with that because the eel is amazing as like a comedically not intentionally bad.
The eel is great, and I just was laughing my ass off reading this. So it gets 3 just for making me have fun.
It's just so.
The best part of this was watching Dan's face twist and turn as he was reacting to the issue. As you were reading this.
What was the point?
The point was they have to publish one of these every month?
Yeah.
It's time to bring back the eel, baby.
They don't have to. I mean, all things being equal, they could just not.
Hey, well, that's the approach they take eventually. Just gotta wait another, just gotta wait another, fucking 13 issues? No. It's a little more than that.
Not that long from here that they switch over.
It's like 18. They switch at 135, so...
Oh, okay, yeah, so about 18.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have less than 20 more issues of the Torch stories, Stan.
And
just
that's
a little bit.
Good thing?
Well, then we get some Nick Fury stories that, from what I hear, are underwhelming.
I actually like the Fury stuff for the most part. It's not amazing, but it's a lot better than the Torch.
Yeah, it's either I've heard people like them or they're underwhelmed by them, pretty much.
It depends how much you like 60s spy stories, like James Bond and stuff.
Yeah.
If you like that stuff, they're pretty good. If you don't, well, they're 60s spy stories.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we've talked enough about that one.
Time to rapidly move away from this.
Let's move on to another shorter one. Dan's going to be excited to hear this. We have the B story of Strange Tales 117, The Many Traps of Baron Mordo. We haven't seen them enough yet. And this is Steve Ditko doing the art, of course, because it's Doctor Strange, and Sam Rosen doing the letters here. And this is only 8 pages long, so I'm sure Dan can fly right through this.
Snap this synopsis off in one paragraph, almost. Yeah, you watch. I can do this. One paragraph coming up, folks.
I believe it, because I've read this story.
In the unlikely event there's anyone watching this that's still awake. Okay, here we go. The Many Traps of Baron Mordo. It's a Doctor Strange story. Using a miniature replica of Doctor Strange's house, Baron Mordo creates a magical trap that transports Strange and his home into an unknown dimension. Okay, that makes no freaking sense at all. Using this magic hot dog, I'm going to turn Chris Evans into a pickle. What? Okay.
They attempt to explain it in the story, but the explanation isn't very good, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay. Seeking the spell's source, Doctor Strange travels into ethereal form to the home of Baron Mordo, where he falls into another trap. Clever, that Mordo. Little bastard. Like a bottle-like prison. Mordo arrives at the Ancient One's house only to discover that Strange has reached there before him. Mordo's magical prison had no floor. By descending downwards through the earth, Strange has eventually weakened the spell enough to break free. There's a magical battle, and then Doctor Strange's good powers defeat Mordo's evil ones. End of comic. Let's rapidly move on.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
Ryan, wake up.
Yeah,
so
they skimmed on one thing that was mildly interesting towards the story, which is that Strange had disguised himself as the Ancient One, so it looked like Mordo showed up and was about to beat the Ancient One, and then the Ancient One's just like, oh yeah, I'm actually Doctor Strange, and kicks his ass.
So I gave that one 4 stars. This was
That's the funniest part of this.
This was back to form for Doctor Strange.
I gave this one a begrudging 3 stars because I thought this was by far the worst Doctor Strange we've covered so far.
I hated the last
issue.
Yeah,
really tired of Baron Mordo.
Yeah, this
How
is
do you
when
think Strange feels.
This is when I wrote down that Baron Mordo is this title's Loki in my notes. I really didn't like the last issue. That was my 2-star one when it was the Nightmare Return. So that probably helped me like this one more. But I don't know. Baron Mordo's overused, but he is the better villain. So I don't know.
He is a better villain than Nightmare, but like this story, it was fine, but this was like a 2.6 for me. Like,
if I read it again,
there was nothing really interesting about this story. I think you were just happy that you were out of that Torch story.
Probably.
Yeah.
Although you liked that
I like
one
the
too.
Torch story. The Torch story, me having fun with the Torch story, probably elevated it too, honestly.
Have you been huffing some of that laughing gas that was inflicted on Johnny in the last issue?
If I read it now, it'd probably be a 3-star, excuse me. But yeah. Pretty strange tales, fun issue all around. But anyways, we'll move on now to the issue I'm begrudgingly covering as we go into Fantastic Four issue number 23, The Master Plan of Dr. Doom. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, of course, George Roussos is on inks, and then we have Sam Rosen on letters. November 1963 release, a 23-page story, so this one got an extra page too. And the cover is better than the whole story. Well, maybe not the whole story, but the story as a whole. And here we go.
Rereading this one, I didn't hate it as much as I expected to.
Oh,
it was also more more Doom heavy than I remembered.
Maybe I should have reread it then. Let's not waste the time with long introduction. We have a sensational tale for you. Let's go. We open up with Chaos and the Fantastic Four in Reed's lab as a fucking dinosaur runs amok. It's a baby dinosaur, by the way. But they take care of it within a page or so, using the powers.
It's really just an excuse to remind us that Sue has force fields now.
Yeah, and it's also an excuse to show us that the Fantastic Four still have Doom's time machine.
Which doesn't really need to happen because I think before the time machine ever becomes relevant again, they put it back in Doom's castle.
Probably. So that's pretty much all that's important there. We do go to a courtroom and stuff as we see some convicts released, which unfortunately does play into the story. And we see they're kind of a little group and they're happy. They are met by this Baldy who comes in as like, and because he came and the bonds was paid on all their releases. So the bald guy's like, oh, you're about to learn why I set you all free. Let me show you the answers. And the bald guy passes out because it's only a robot. And then a voice comes over the intercom. And it is none other than Dr. Doom, as he is informing how he has collected these three men that he bought the bonds of to release them. That he is going to use them as a team. And we meet Bull Brogan, arrested for beating up 6 husky longshoremen who wouldn't join his protection racket, and he is the brawn of the group. We have handsome Harry Phillips, who has movie star features and cunning cool brain, and he is the merciless con man of the group. And then we have Yogi Dakor. Yogi is a circus man and fireproof for a circus act. And before he was arrested for trying to steal the show's payroll.
One of these characters actually becomes somewhat significant.
So the trio meets Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom goes through his plan to use them to destroy the Fantastic Four once and for all. As obviously happens.
I'm thinking of the other shitty.
You're thinking of the Spider-Man group that's coming next week.
I realized afterwards that.
We'll get into that later on. But we see at that moment in the Baxter building the Fantastic Four working in the lab. As they because this is the issue with the conflict of who should be leader, because Reed was being a dick earlier, so they're like, Reed, you shouldn't be leader, and so they all start fighting about who should be leader, and they hear the vote on who should be leader, and wow, they all voted for themselves. Who would have thought?
Reed's been a dick for 2 years now. Are they really surprised?
So
and yes, it has been 2 years. This is issue 23.
Yeah. So Finn and after they all vote for themselves, Finn and Johnny start to have a little battle, which doesn't really go anywhere. Sue ends up breaking it up for force fields before Reed comes in and fully breaks it up by lassoing the two of them in his arms. He's like it or not, I'm the leader of this group, pretty much. I think that's when this happens. So yeah. We then go back to Doom in his hidden lab as he performs evil science experiments on... okay. So this trio he released gets called the Terrible Trio. Great name.
Terrible.
That's literally their name.
It is the most accurate name we've had in a while.
It is the most accurate
Usually they
name.
try to sound scary or something with their team name. These guys are just like, yeah, we suck. We know we're terrible.
Yeah, so Dr. Doom performs his experiments on these men and gives them all powers to try and make them equal to the Fantastic Four so they can be destroyed. So, I forget their names already.
Don't worry about it. None of them are important enough to be worth remembering their names.
The one that is the con man, he's the one I really don't know the name of. The one that's the con man gets the ability to hear. He has his hearing extra sensitive, so he can hear as much as a feather falling to the ground. So he will be able to detect the Invisible Girl wherever she is by the sense of hearing. And then we have Bull Brogan, who is the muscle power of the group, and he has been given strength to almost possibly rival the power of the Thing. And then we have Yogi. And Yogi, he was already the fireproof man in the circus performing his act. Now he is really the fireproof man. That wasn't on the nose at all, as Doom has literally made him fireproof, as we see him walk through flames after he receives his powers. So, Doom's plan is set in place, and they start tricking the Fantastic Four out one by one to take them down. So Torch is called out via newspaper, and it is said in the newspaper that the Torch is to receive a Marvel car, as they call it, to receive a car from wealthy Maharajan politician or something like that, who is just Yogi. So Yogi gets him trapped in this fantastic car. Not actually a fantastic car, but once Torch is in and trapped in, Torch quickly finds out this is a trap, but can't break out because everything's fireproof, including the fireproof man in here. And this is when Yogi gasses Johnny, and Johnny passes out. Next, we see the Thing called out to fight, and I believe he's tricked by a member of the Yancey Street gang to come out onto the street. As we see Bull Brogan punches up through a sewer grater and starts battling the Thing. Eventually, Bull's kind of losing the battle still to the Thing, but Bull's like, I got this ray, and he shoots the Thing with the ray, and it turns it back momentarily to Ben Grimm, which gives Bull Brogan the advantage to knock Ben Grimm out, so he is now captured as well. Then, we see Reed and Sue back at the Baxter building with Reed getting a little too frisky, a little too hands-on here, as he tests Sue's reflexes, but Sue shows him what for and uses her force fields to get him the fuck off. And then we see how Sue is tricked as a man who, I don't remember his name still, and I'm not going back to look at it, comes and puts on his movie star charms on her, and it's like, and says how he has flowers for her and wants her to smell the flowers. But Sue does smell the flowers, but she quickly
sniff my finger.
Yes. Sue realizes something is up with the flowers right after she takes a sniff. So to get away from him before something happens to her, she turns invisible and starts running away. But as we talked about, this guy has the powers to detect where she is no matter what. So he is easily able to also give her the sleeping gas. And so now, all of the members of the Fantastic Four, besides Reed Richards, have been captured by Dr. Doom and his terrible trio. You know, reading this for the synopsis, going for this for the synopsis, is way better than actually sitting down and reading this. But...
like I said, it's not nearly as bad as I remembered it being.
So, Dr. Doom has created a Doombot of the Thing, which uses the Fantastic Four flare gun to shoot up in the air, and this is where they get Reed Richards trapped, as Dr. Doom and his Thing Doombot capture him encase him in a glass cage. They encage him in glass, whatever, and also weld it shut so he can't use his powers to get out. because there's no breaks in the glass. So they're all trapped in a room, Reed's in the glass box, and the rest are chained to the walls, which is pretty kinky. Dr. Doom then turns his fin. Doom bought the ash, which probably could have used it later on, but it's okay. So then we see Dr. Doom reward his terrible trio by giving them a box each that contains $5,000. And Doom's called most generous. And then we go back to the Fantastic Four as they are able to escape their chain.
Oh, you missed the best part.
Okay, what did I miss?
After he gave them the $5,000, he teleported them all to another fucking dimension so they couldn't spend it.
Oh, yes. Of course. How did I miss that? Classic
Too
Doom.
funny.
I can't wait till we get to...
Even Doom didn't respect those guys.
Power Man is... I mean, Doom is an asshole with his money. I can't wait till we get to the Power Man two-part story. But anyway...
I love that story.
It's awesome.
I just find it really amazing that... And a lot of actors have talked about this over the years, but... Being the bad guy is always the best part for an actor, right? They say, you can do whatever you want. You can go crazy. It was like David Tennant in Jessica Jones. He could just, stretch his acting chops as far as he wanted and have fun with it.
So good.
But even in Marvel, at their worst, their villains are always so much better than the superheroes they come up with. I mean... There's a couple of questionable bad guys, but for the most part, the supervillains are always the better part.
Marvel does have a lot of good villains.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, DC has plenty as well, but...
Oh, well, I think, all companies have great villains, because Doom is a really iconic villain for Marvel, Joker's an iconic villain for DC, but they're not the only ones.
Yeah, I would say if we were comparing them more fully that Marvel has more consistently good villains across all their heroes more than DC does, because some DC heroes kind of have some pretty shitty villains at times, But
DC doesn't have anything like Paste Pod Pete or anything like that.
I was just going to say, I think that's the real test. Is that,
or the Porcupine.
Marvel has the better bad villains. They both have the good villains.
That's what I was trying to say.
Marvel's bad guys are really bad. They're as in terrible.
Yeah, but they're fun terrible for the most part. There's very few. There's the Painter and so, but most of their awful villains at least have some sort of gimmick that make them hilarious, whether planned as such or not.
But also what I was getting at, too, as part of that is when you think more of the DC, great villains, you think of, Batman villains and stuff. So that's what I was kind of getting at, too. You think of more of certain characters' rogues galleries more than a spread across the spectrum.
To be honest, I don't think I could name a really iconic Wonder Woman villain.
Name 10 Flash villains right now.
Anti-Flash? The other guy that could run really fast?
Just stop it there. Just stop it there. You're going to get Flash fans pissed at us if any watch this.
Yeah.
I was doing that on purpose.
But no, like I say, it's just with Marvel, maybe it's just me, but I just find the Fantastic Four very bland.
They are extremely bland.
That's why a lot of people don't like
two-dimensional. And I understand they're trying to make Johnny Torch more interesting and give him motives and personality and all this stuff. But the Fantastic Four is very bland. The Hulk and Iron Man are probably the two deepest characters they've got out there.
The only enjoyable character in Fantastic Four is Ben.
Yeah, and he's hardly ever used.
Well, he sucks on his own. He's good as with someone else, but on his own, he's terrible because he doesn't have anyone to play off.
Yeah.
But in saying how the Fantastic Four is bland, it's funny too, just because it is legitimately one of the better consistently produced titles at the moment, and will become one of, if not the best title for some years to come.
Yeah, but even where it's the best title, it's because of all these incredible concepts that affect the Marvel universe as a whole coming out of it, not because of
all
the
these
team
concepts.
themselves.
all the other new heroes they could introduce, all the other new villains they could introduce.
Wakanda, and you get the Inhumans, and you get Galactus, like all these
Silver Surfer.
Yeah, all these massive world-defining things are being presented in Fantastic Four, partially because they're such a blank slate that it's easy to present these things on.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's finish this story.
Enough of our Fantastic Four commentary. We'll expand on that as we go through more issues. But back to this story, we go back to the chained up and trapped Fantastic Four, and they're able to escape because, well, since Doom last met the team, she has gained new powers, so she used her new abilities to free Ben, who then frees the rest of them, including Reed from his glass cage. And I
love how he frees Reed. He just punches the glass cage as hard as he can. Reed hopes he doesn't hit him.
Yeah. So they
Reed's literally cowering in the corner when Ben's doing that.
I always kind of visualize that's how it really plays out anyway, so...
They start chasing after Doom, and Finn is attacked by a big machine. And then Doom also points some kind of weapon at... I think it's the thing that sends people to other dimensions, the gun, that he points at Sue. But Reed is now free and attacks Doom. They finally break Johnny free because they fought of him last, which is hilarious.
Yeah, they finished fighting Doom and then freed Johnny.
Can't steal the spotlight this time, kid. Reed goes to wrap up Doom, but Doom has some kind of liquid on him. He gets frozen by Doom. So Doom slides out of his arms. And he freezes some ropes as well and tries to sling the rope at Human Torch, but Thing gets in the way, and Torch flames on and melts Reed out of his ice sculpture form. And all the team now is ready to attack Doom. Doom gets overwhelmed and makes himself vanish. And this is where he
just goes into the next room.
He goes into the next room because he starts ripping the fabric of space-time? I don't know.
No, I'm going to explain what actually happened here, because it's way worse.
Yeah, you can take this, then.
It's a solar flare.
Oh, thank you.
But they don't know what they do, so Stan decides they teleport you into outer space, and he comes up with some story about a weather station getting teleported into outer space with it. And so the conclusion is that, Doom built this building on this location because he calculated the solar flare was going to hit here, and then if his plan failed, the Fantastic Four would still get teleported into space by natural causes. It is peak Stan doesn't understand science.
It is.
But it's actually a pretty good scene.
Yeah, so the Fantastic Four are trapped in this room as space is enclosing on them, but joke's on Doom as they pull him back into the room, and he actually falls out into space. And before the Fantastic Four see the same fate, they all start sliding into the other room that Doom was in that's safe from this situation. And the Finn barely manages to make it through right as space encloses on the room they were in. And that's where we end this issue off, as we are teased with next time they have quite the plan coming. No, they don't even really tease that this time. Okay, I thought they did.
They just admit that they haven't killed Doom. That's all they do.
They just admit, they're like, oh, wait to see how we bring him back next time. We're already chomping at the bit to come up with something. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, we don't know how we're getting him back yet, but we'll think of something.
Yeah, that's what they say. So, anyways, I did not like this the first time, so I gave this a 2. If I reread this now, especially looking at it as I was doing synopsis, it's probably more of a 3, and the average rating is a 3 on the site that we use, but I just didn't like this when I first read it, so it got a 2 from me.
I gave it a 3 because, everything works better than it should.
The pity vote.
The team of the 3 guys they get to try to beat the Fantastic Four suck. I should hate them, but Stan and Jack knew they sucked and wrote them as if they sucked, so it kind of worked.
That's what I didn't like the trio. That's what brought it. I mean, I like that it makes sense. Doom experiments on them and gets them to be able to take them down. It's just so fucking hokey. It was so hokey for me.
See,
I
the reason it worked for me was because
it's what
they were
going
never
for.
presented as the Fantastic Four's equals.
Yeah, they
were able
to
beat them in one situation where things were prepared to be entirely in their advantage.
Yeah. It's like the Mad Thinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, except Doom's actually a threat.
Yeah. How did you feel about this issue, Dan?
Oh my God! Don't even get me started. It's just.
I know you love the Fantastic Four.
Well, again, they're just very bland.
This was also the weakest Doom appearance so far, although re-looking at it, it's not as bad as I thought.
I like
it was.
Doom. Right?
Doom's
I like
great.
Doom. I think he's a great villain, but I just find it's kind of. It's almost like they don't know what to do with him.
They don't at this point.
Yeah,
Right.
he's not really Doom yet. He doesn't he's not Latverian or anything yet. All the good stuff's still to come.
His gimmick so far, part of his gimmick so far is that he keeps getting killed each appearance because it's like they need to write him off for a bit because they don't want to overuse. They don't want to make him too powerful either. It's like seems.
Yeah, which is fair, but again, you make him as powerful as you want. Force the good guys to actually show some character and. Make them try and, actually defeat him properly.
That's what makes Fantastic Four later on more of a compelling story.
I think that's why Spider-Man is what I consider the best story right now. I know you're going to love to hear this, Dan, but Spider-Man is the one story where he consistently feels outclassed by the villain. The second time the villains show up, they're way easier for him to beat, but the first time he's faced pretty much every major villain, he's been on the back foot for the entire time.
And that gets broken too when we get to the Dr. Octopus two-parter that's coming up soon too. So,
I mean, it already got broken a bit with Vulture's
Vulture
return and Sandman's return. Both of those, he was way more prepared. But the first time he fought them, he was overpowered completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, again, it goes back to what I was saying before. Marvel's really struggling to put together stories that are interesting, and they end up sort of ending them in these sort of chintzy little, victories for the good guy every time. And there's nothing, there's no hook to it at all.
Because they haven't gotten to a point yet where they realize you pull readers in by continuing stories and also by doing a little thing called cliffhangers to where you have an ending to an issue that is not fully satisfied at conclusion and leaves you wondering what's coming next.
Yeah, and that's the big change that's coming in a couple of years. Comic Time is that they'll start having all the stories pretty much cliffhang you. Even if they end an arc, there will be something dangling to make you pick up the next issue and see what happens next.
Yeah, because
right now the best they can do is do a paragraph like, hey, we'll think of some way to bring Dr. Doom back, so you might as well keep reading and see what that is.
Comics at their best are when it's one continuing story will continuing to draw you in. And right now they're not doing these things where it's like, oh, we're going to leave you on the cliffhanger. It looks like the villain has won. Come back next issue, see if our heroes get out of this situation. Like, we're not seeing that really at this point.
Well, we're not. There's no denying that. They did try it for one. But I guess it's just that it feels like there's nothing to them right now. It's just
because half of them are one-off stories and stuff.
Yeah, well, they're
more
still firmly. I mean, they're starting to play it a longer, ongoing story, but a lot of the mentality is still firmly rooted in the golden age. With, you do your little episodic story. It doesn't matter if you buy the comic every month. You just read the little story and move on.
Yeah, it's very generic.
And that's a big reason why we started here and not back at the beginning of the golden age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I think it's about time we move on to our main events of the week.
As we go into an hour and a half.
Dan's favorite, not quite, but as we go into Dan's favorite title, Amazing Spider-Man, with issue number 9, with the story called The Man Called Electro. Stan Lee and Steve Ditko are here to save the day, as we have Artie Simek on letters. November 1963 release, a 22-page story, and Bill, take us away.
All right. So we open, and Spider-Man is in a desperate hurry, heading across town with a bag of something stuck to his waist belt, and he completely ignores a police shootout with a bunch of criminals, but the criminals get so distracted by seeing him fly by that they'll stare at him while the police capture him. And he goes running home. He changes into his civilian clothes and goes running in, and we find Aunt May sick in bed, and he had gone to buy her medicine.
Aww.
And this is the first of many times where Aunt May almost dies, and the story is not better for her living.
It took 9 issues for May to get sick for the first time.
Wow.
Anyway, we're left with this quandary of Peter dealing with his aunt being on death's door because she's 148 years old, or approximately 1/3 the age of Dan.
Ow. That's just cruel.
You didn't think you were getting through an Aunt May segment without some ageism, did you?
No, that's fair. I knew something was coming.
And we cut over to our new villain, who is, of course, wearing green.
Of course.
And he's charging himself up on some fancy electrical device because he is Electro, and his powers are electricity, and he's aware of an armored car shipping gold that he wants to rob. So he just walks up to the armored car, and when the police, or the guards question him, he tases the shit out of them, and he takes their gold and leaves.
Ooh, good for him.
And we cut back to Peter talking to the doctor, and Aunt May is getting worse, and she's going to need an operation at the hospital, which Peter can't afford. But he tells them to take her to the hospital anyway, and he'll figure out some way to get the money, because the American healthcare system is wonderful. And we go, and we see Peter in class, but he's completely distracted. And Flash has decided after he got his ass kicked by Peter in the previous issue that maybe he's not so bad. So he's going to try to make friends with him. But Peter's so distracted by worrying about his aunt that he just completely blows him off. And Flash gets mad and decides he was right about Peter after all. And Peter goes and visits his aunt at the hospital and discovers that Betty has been sitting with her because she found out that his aunt was sick and wanted to help out. And so Peter and Betty leave, and Peter has something he has to do. And so he goes one way and Betty goes the other way, wondering what this secret that Peter carries buried deep within him, which no one can ever share, is. And Peter turns into Spider-Man and goes to try to get some pictures of Spider-Man fighting crime they can sell to Jonah so he can pay for his aunt's operation. But it starts to rain. His camera won't work in the rain, so he can't, and he just goes home and washes his Spider-Man uniform. That's not me joking. He literally has to wring it out in the sink because it got all wet and he has to wash it.
Classic Spider-Man.
And he tries to study, but he can't focus. So he goes to the Bugle. And Jonah has come to the conclusion that Jonah's gone to the bank and he wants to make a deposit. But while he's waiting, Electro shows up and robs the bank. And insults Jonah a couple of times because Jonah tries to bully him into leaving him alone until he gets his deposit done. And Electro runs off with the money and uses static charges to climb the wall. And Jonah's like, hey, he's about the same size as someone else I know, and he climbs the walls. He must be Spider-Man. And then
Makes sense to
Spider-Man
me.
flies by, or swings by, and Jonah sees him and is like, aha, he's turned into Spider-Man to make his escape. So he starts publishing reports that Electro is Spider-Man and how he has indisputable evidence. And he goes on to make a movie called 1999 Mules about how Spider-Man's really Electro with all his evidence.
Absolutely. I would.
And people start believing what Jonah said. Peter doesn't care because he's too busy worrying about his aunt and how he's still trying to figure out how he's going to come up with $1,000 to pay for her operation. And so he goes to the Bugle and he begs Jonah to loan him money. And Jonah refuses. But he says if he can get photographic proof that Spider-Man is Electro, he'll give him the money. So Peter heads off to commit forgery. Actually, his first plan is to just capture Electro and turn him in for the reward.
Yeah.
And so he starts going around looking for Electro, and he finds him robbing a safe. And so he takes some pictures of him, and then he starts fighting with Electro. But it doesn't go very well because Electro is electrically charged, so every time he punches him, he shocks himself and ends up knocking himself out. And Electro escapes. But Peter remembers that he's got this photo, so he goes and he manipulates the photos to make it look like Electro is turning into Spider-Man. And he sells the manipulated photo to Jonah for $1,000, and then uses the money to pay for his aunt's operation. Well, Jonah publishes the doctored photos. And everyone is talking about how I guess Spider-Man was bad. And we cut over to Electro laughing his ass off because no one will look for him since they think he's Spider-Man. And he remembers how he used to be a lineman who was a complete asshole and wouldn't do anything without getting a bonus for it, including rescuing his coworker from up a pole where he got electrocuted. And so
it's like Spider-Man.
Yeah, they agree to pay Electro the bonus, and he goes up the pole and winches his coworker down so he can be taken to the hospital. But then the pole gets hit by lightning and he gets knocked off it. But somehow he survived this, and he realized it gave him electric powers, so he became a supervillain because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then back in the present, he goes
Or
to...
you could go back to high school and whine about how horrible your life is.
That he could also do, but he chose the electric supervillain route.
Good choice.
And so he goes to the local prison, busts a bunch of people out to become his henchmen. And we see Peter walking down the street, and he hears an APB from a passing cop car about Electro breaking people out of the prison. And so he decides he's going to deal with it as Spider-Man as soon as he pays for his aunt's operation. So he goes and pays for her operation, and she gets taken in to be operated on. And Peter has to sit and wait to see if she's all right. But fortunately, Betty comes to sit with him. And Jonah goes to the prison, and he's sitting outside the prison gloating about how he's going to be vindicated because Spider-Man can't show up to fight Electro since they're both the same person. And Electro at this point has triggered a full-scale prison riot. We cut back to the hospital where Peter's informed that the operation was a success and Aunt May's going to be all right. And so he goes home to get some rest now that he's not worried about Aunt May anymore, or at least that's what he tells Betty. But she's like, she needs to go to the office because Jonah isn't there since he went to cover the riot, and she begs Peter to not go there and take any pictures because it's too dangerous. But Peter's like, but those are the ones Jonah pays the most for. I have to. And she's like, she's worried that he's beginning to enjoy the danger, just like someone else she once knew. Foreshadowing. And so Peter turns into Spider-Man and starts heading for the prison, but on his way he breaks into a hardware store and swipes some stuff and leaves some money behind for it. And Jonah is happily gloating about the Pulitzer Prize he's going to get for the information he published that Electro and Spider-Man are the same person. And just then, oh shit, here comes Spider-Man swinging in, proving he's wrong, and he's going to be a laughingstock because of Peter Parker.
No, it proves that Peter Parker's lying his ass off.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's a little prick for faking Jonah out. Jonah's not the bad guy here. It's
I never
clearly
said he
Spider-Man. Spider-Man's clearly the bad guy. He's faking all of this, manipulating photos, stuff like that. Oh my God, what a little douche.
I told you you'd like this one.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, Spider-Man busts into the prison and puts on the stuff he's stolen, which consists of rubber gloves and Crocs.
Yeah, let's go. Croc
And
Hey.
now he goes down and he confronts Electro and all the prisoners, wearing his rubber gloves and Crocs that the colorist consistently forgot existed and just colored the same color as his normal costume. And he starts fighting with Electro, and Electro's gloating that as soon as he touches him, he's going to get knocked out again, so why is he even trying? Except this time, Spider-Man is insulated. So he punches out Electro, he punches out all the crooks so badly that they go running back to their cells because it's safer in there. And Electro decides that since his electricity isn't working, he'll try the simple method of just using a gun. But Spider-Man throws a bucket of sand into his face, webs up the gun, and eventually sprays him with a water hose so that he short circuits and passes out. And then Spider-Man takes off his mask and, unsurprisingly, has no fucking clue who he is. And
It's old man Jenkins.
He gathers up his camera, and we cut back to Daily Bugle where Jonah is feeling miserable that he published the doctored photos.
So Peter loses his job like he should.
Well, he's about to fire Peter, and Peter's just like, well, okay, you can fire me. I'll just take these pictures of Electro and his real identity to your competitor. And Jonah's like, oh, I kind of need those pictures.
Oh, my boy, I was just joking.
Yeah, and so he makes a deal with Peter that he won't punish him for the doctored photos if he gets these photos for free.
Smart businessman right there.
That's right. That's right.
And Peter makes the deal because it assuages his guilt about previously doctoring photos. And he walks out of the site, out of the jail. Fuck. Can you tell it's been a long recording session?
Yes.
He walks out of Jonah's office and runs into Betty, who's mad at him for actually going to the jail to take the pictures instead of staying safe. And she doesn't want to be hurt by someone else being addicted to chasing danger. And so Peter takes it as that they're breaking up, and he walks off all sad. And he goes to the hospital and sees Aunt May, who's going to be released in a couple of days. And he leaves the hospital happy that his aunt's going to be all right, but sad that he had a fight with Betty. And there comes Betty running up because she feels bad for putting bad behavior of someone else onto Peter. And so they make up and walk off together, and the story ends.
Oh.
Yeah. The funny
if
thing
you
about
need
this,
further proof that Spider-Man was a wanker.
the funny part about this recording session, if we joke about it being long, it's only long in terms of our recent ones have been shorter, pretty much.
Yeah, we're
because
only
it's
8
not even
minutes
that long.
longer than our average.
Yeah.
But
Just feels longer.
Yeah,
because
those first two felt like they took forever.
yeah, because they took like
They
48
did
minutes.
take forever.
But I mean, it's just that's why I said this week's lineup worked out weirdly because of how the order went. But anyways, for Spider-Man rating, I went into this thinking I'd give this a 4. I only gave this a 3. It was underwhelming to me, but I still liked it.
This was a 4 to me. Like, the stuff with Electro was average, but I actually really liked the interpersonal stuff that happened outside. I liked Peter being put into a position where he felt like he had to fake photos just to be able to afford to keep his aunt alive. Like, that's a level of nuance they don't generally go into in comics with your heroes.
True.
Yeah. I wanted Electro to feel more important, and I wanted
Electro was the least important thing in this
Electro
issue.
was underwhelming. I thought his first appearance would be a bigger deal, but it's not.
I didn't find Electro to be a particularly inspiring villain anyway. Ever. Like, he's just never been a villain.
There's been a lot of times he hasn't been inspiring, but he can be a good villain. He can be. I've seen it done.
Okay. I've never ever considered him to be more than a backup singer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he has a higher upside than some of Peter's more iconic villains. He never gets used well.
They don't take full advantage of his character and powers half the time.
Yeah, because his powers are way more dangerous than someone like Kraven the Hunter. But Kraven's the more iconic villain because they use him better.
Yeah. That covers it pretty much, yeah. He just hasn't been used to his full potential.
Anyway, I did give this one a 4.
Yeah, the 3 for me. I was underwhelmed a little, but still good. And Dan, I'm sure, gave this a 2.
Barely. There's nothing to it.
It got a 2 just for showing how big of a little prick Peter is, I'm sure.
Well, no, it doesn't do Peter any favors. No, it doesn't, right? I mean, I understand why they went in the direction they did with it, where Peter, he feels boxed in, he does all this stuff. But if you want to show a villain with bad tendencies and an evil side, go with Iron Man. You know, right? Somebody who's fighting their own inner demons all the time, as opposed to a superhero who's fighting the fact that he's a complete dork.
Yeah, I think part of the problem at this point is they can't really go into the darkness of Iron Man because at this point his comics are largely a propaganda piece about the good of the military-industrial complex, and it isn't really till things go squirrely in Vietnam that they start questioning that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's we're still 10 years away from a proper social awakening.
They start doing some social awakening earlier because the Civil Rights Act is going to be passed in about a year from this point.
Yeah.
And at that point, they start really looking at racial issues and stuff. But as far as militarism, we're about 10 years out from anything on that.
Yeah. It's not exciting. It's not challenging, I guess, is the point. It's kind of like Namor was great simply because he was different.
Yeah.
But you're listening to the story going, oh God, what's the bloody point?
Yeah. At this point, they're also really hamstrung by the comics code because they can't question authority. It's actually forbidden by the comic code to have, at this point, a politician or a high-ranking member of the police be corrupt.
Yeah. I
so
think
they
your
can't
dog's
do
trying to tell you something there, buddy.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, we'll get to wrapping this up so we can have fun. So with that in mind, we have next week's episode to talk about real quick and what we're going to be covering. So we are going to start off next week's episode with the next issue of Strange Tales, which is issue 118. And the A story is going to be... it's the Return of the Wizard. Lovely. And then we have a B story for Doctor Strange, where he is met by the Possessed, and we'll talk about that. That'll really be an interesting topic. Amazing Spider-Man number 10 comes next, because we didn't get enough Spidey this week, so we got to get another issue next week, as we meet the Enforcers.
Must have more Spidey.
But that's an important issue, because we learn why J. Jonah Jameson really hates Spider-Man.
We do, and we meet the Enforcers and the group that Bill was confusing earlier with the Terrible Trio, and one of the members actually have an importance. And then we have X-Men issue number 4, which is the first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, so we will meet some new mutants next time, which are big,
That's
important
good.
characters.
Yeah.
We have Strange Tales number 119A story, where the Torch goes wild and we meet the Rabble Rouser. That's a story and a half. We have the B story of that one, which sees Doctor Strange go beyond the Purple Veil. That's where I'll leave that one. And then our main event, we're gonna end on a high note as we end with Fantastic Four issue number. This is why I told you not to look ahead. We are gonna end next week's episode off on a high note with Fantastic Four issue number 24 as we meet the Infant Terrible. Bill's favorite Fantastic Four issue.
No.
Wait.
You can't even make fun of it for just being the one I hate the most, because it's not. I hate the Impossible Man more than this one.
That's fucked up. The Impossible
Yeah.
Man is way more upside than this fucker. Even I agree with Bill on this, on the Infant Terrible, that it's bad. But anyways, let's get to wrapping this up. We will have a bonus episode this month for our Choose On series, where we will be talking about the Alien franchise, so stay tuned for that. We have yet to decide the date when that's coming, but we will get that going at some point. You might, we'll probably get an update on that next episode.
Yeah.
Excuse
Hopefully.
me. And anyway, on that note, I think it is time we all bid you adieu. And if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, even share what you like to. We are also available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you're on Spotify, click that poll. Let us know what your favorite issue we covered was. Anyway, guys, we will see you all in the next episode, and peace out.
Have a
See you
good one.
later, guys. Bye-bye.